All right, I think we are 25 participants here. I will just start by laying out the ground rules. So basically, I would like for all of you to stay muted, apart from our key speakers, of course. If you have any questions throughout the workshop, feel free to write them in the chat, as well as after the workshop, there will be time where you can ask them by raising your hand or raising your physical hand as well. And yes, so first of all, we will start by workshop. We will be talking today about durable energy and bacteria batteries. And then we will move on to the discussion part or the Ideathon part, where we'll be discussing further how to make Europe a greener and more durable place for all of us. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce our two wonderful key speakers today. Moritz SCHOTTMÜLLER, who is a German graphic designer currently studying and working in Germany. And he has recently discovered Geobacteria cells through the work of Professor Rasa SMITE. And using her approach, he has developed new ways of making the components of the cells at home during lockdown. And his partner, Efren TREVISAN, who is also a designer from Venice, Italy. And Efren currently is a master's student in IUAV University in Venice. And during his studies, he also completed a partnership period in Germany, specializing in geobacteria cell design and research. And one of his biggest passions in designing objects based on scientific innovation and physics. And he also attended Rasa's course and developed new approaches and innovations in the field. So I think I can say from all of us here that we are very excited to learn more about bacteria batteries. So I will spotlight you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eva. Hey everyone, and thanks for the really nice introduction. Efren, are you uploading the small presentation?
Yeah, sorry, but I have like 100 stuff open. Okay, can you see the presentation now?
Yeah, I think so. Perfect.
Is it nice? Perfect.
Okay, so I think I also speak for Efren when I said that we are super excited that so many of you joined our workshop and also this small lecture. It's a bit something in between workshop and lecture, and also there will be a practical part where we will show some stuff. And we really would like to show you a bit more about this technology of Geobacter cells, sometimes also called Geobacter fuel cells or MAT batteries. And we hope that we can explain you a bit broadly the concept. And if we would be able to even spark some interest in this topic and even bring some of you to start to experiment yourself, which is really easy and really fun, then we would be really more than happy. Just as a quick start, those Geobacter cells that you see on this picture, they're a rather small and very easy to build energy source that make use of bacteria that live mostly in a non-oxygen environment, let's say under the earth or in mud and stumps, and you can use them to power things. And Efren, he was in his research, he was really looking into how to control them, how to change them, and how to, he was looking more into the scientific research, while I was really more looking into how to build the parts that you need to construct those fuel cells at home during the pandemic lockdown. And I think we have to start with a big disclaimer at first, because right now we're only able to produce a very slow current of energy that is about 1 volt, maybe more or less. that is also strong enough to power a small LED. But the reason why we're still so excited about this technology is, of course, due to the seriousness of the trouble the humankind is right now finding itself. So even those technologies that at first seem to really not be profitable because they produce such a low current become worth taking a look. Exactly. And when we researched a bit, we stumbled across a website where you can look your carbon, where you can check out your carbon footprint or your energy footprint of your consumption. And while working on the batteries, we did that, and we were really shocked how much energy we need and how much we use and discharge. So in the end, we would like if you all to make this carbon footprint or this energy footprint test with you, and we would love if you could share in the chat then the results of that. And yeah, the first question that always rises when we talk about the generation of energy, and always when I say generation or use, I always of course mean it in a more scientific way. Of course, you cannot generate energy, but you can transform it. But let's keep it on a more easy level. So I will maybe talk about generating and making energy, even though of course that's not really scientific. But when we talk about the generation of energy, the first question that always rises is, of course, do we need to look for new ways of generating electricity? Because it is right that we might have enough oil and other carbon fuel sources on this planet to sustain our greedy need for electricity for maybe the next 50 years. But the problem with that is that it always gets more and more expensive to get to them. The oil is always getting, of course, less, and it always gets more expensive to get them. And the second thing, of course, and maybe the more severe reason why to look for new sources of energy is that carbon emission is or are the biggest threat to, or the biggest reason for global warming. And that's why it's so important to look for new ways to generate them. And the second question that could be raised while talking about this topic of Geobacter cells is also that, I mean, we do already have some emission-free energy sources, let's say like wind, water energy. We have the sun power and geothermic energy that we can make use of. But those are really great great solutions, but each of them comes a bit with a disadvantage. Let's say wind is not always there when we need it. Sun is always there half a day, and also the water energy cannot be harvested everywhere. So Efren will, I think, go a bit deeper into those kind of problematics. But however, there comes the biggest advantage of the Geobacter cells, is because it's quite small, easy to use, and it would produce 24/7 electricity. And you can literally place it everywhere. You can place it on top of a building. You can place it in the desert. You can place it under the ocean. You can place it everywhere, on the moon. And with that, I think Efren can now tell you a bit more how those batteries that make use of these microbiotics are working. So I hand over to Efren, to Italy.
Thank you very much, Moritz. It was necessary, your first explanation at the beginning, why to use these cells and why to go deeper and more understanding this new way of doing electricity. So now, as first, we will understand better how to do a cell and what there's inside a cell. So when we are talking about microbial fuel cell, we are talking about energy from mud, from the ground, you know. So there's a lot of bacteria inside and a lot of studies about that. So what we are using and mostly are the Geobacteria. So we have to introduce a bit what are Geobacteria. Geobacteria, in particular, the sulfureduscens kind of Geobacteria, because there are a lot, also metareduscens and others, are bacteria that purifies water, and in this work that they do, they create electrons, and so they can transmit electrons around there. There are a lot of studies. The first studies were from the microbiologists, and in particular the professor Derek Lovely at the University of Massachusetts. He found for first these Geobacteria sulfureduscens and their possibility to eat organic materials and produce from their electrons to transfer. So they do electricity, they take electrons from iron, for iron compounds, Fe3, in the reduction. As we said, they are the most efficient bacteria because, yeah, we can say the previous microbial fuel cell and the discovery of the Geobacteria battery, that, and we can say, we can read here, there's almost total recovery as electricity of these bacteria, and also that they are very stable along the time. So their action is very long and they can produce a lot of energy, not as the previous cells that were more also unstable also. As we said, the Geobacteria, they do a reduction of Fe3 in Fe2. So from this reduction, they can eat and transfer the electrons from iron. We can talk about rust. We can talk about iron, for example, in the bottom of the sea, in the rocks, and other organic compounds. Also petrol. There's another interesting intervention, that they put these Geobacteria in the Gulf of Mexico for extinguish the petrol, for example, that was in the sea. So they are really, really, really open, and it's possible to experiment a lot with there. So as Moritz says before, we can recreate energy by garbage. It's a burning, we can say technology, we can say a burning study. So each steps that we do are news, and so there's a lot of knowledge, innovation, and you have to experiment a lot if you want to go deeply in the Geobacteria, with the Rasa course we did all together. And I think that also Moritz says that it's very important for the energy, about energy, is that they can work continuously. So they are not like sun that works only 12 hours or more per day, or wind, or, you know. So these Geobacteria works a lot, and they can work, we can say, continuously also. So first of all, when we have to build a bacteria battery cell, a Geobacteria cell, we have to, the first question that that we have is where to find these Geobacteria around your home. For example, when I was in Karlsruhe, we went to this river, the Murg River, and in this river, the water, it was very red. I noticed with some friend that there was a very red water. So it means that there's a lot of iron inside from rocks, you know. And so we went there, and it's good because means that in the bottom of the river, maybe it's full of geobacteria because they have what to eat. And it was right when we took the water from this river and we put also into the some carotages, and we put to experiment a bit. You can see here that the water is red, so means that there's a lot of iron inside. They can work better. Yeah, this is an image. I put this image because it's clear a bit where you can find it. You find this geobacteria in an anaerobic environment. So means that you have to go in the bed of the river, in the bottom of the river, do a hole a bit, and take from this anaerobic part that it's maintained by the water. And yeah, I wasn't alone. There was also friends that helps me, and I want to say thanks also to my colleagues. Also, there are not only in the Murg River in Germany, but there are also in Venetian Lagoon. The Venetian Lagoon, because why? Because there's also another kind of water. There's sweet water and also salty water. There's a mixture. So we can say that they can live also in different salinity of water. And I experimented also about around the Venetian Lagoon to where to find there. So now that we know where to find the geobacteria, that we know where to do holes in the bottom of the rivers or the lagoon, we can go on about the topic to how to build a single cell battery. After Moritz will explain also how we can build two cells battery. So there's you can experiment a lot. You can find your way to do a geobacteria battery, of course. Okay, I think that, don't worry, it's more clear that it seems. So first of all, for do a geobacteria cell, we need two chambers, one with water and the other one with mud or wastewater with geobacteria inside, you know. So we have the anode chamber in the geobacteria part, where they can act directly with the anode, and the cathode chamber is the water one, so the one in the right. Between there's a proton exchange membrane. So here, the proton exchange membrane, we can, there are a lot of exchange membrane, also professionals one, also membranes that they use in chemistry laboratories, so, and in biology laboratories. So there are a lot, and they are very expensive, but we can, for studies, we can also do it with a Petri dish. And so we need the proton exchange membrane that filter the hydrogen parts from the mud to the water. Then we can connect a cable from the anode to what we wanna give current, and the other cable from the cathode to the minus of the current, you know. In this way, the geobacteria that are all in the mud, they can go and work in the anode. I wanna tell you also that the anode, it has to be in carbon, so we can find it in coal. We can find it also in graphite, as you prefer. We saw that also that the graphite is more efficient than than the coal, but anyway, it's possible to do in both. And the cathode chamber, we can use copper, or zinc cathode, but you can experiment a lot also in this way. So the geobacteria that are in the mud, as you can see, are the green little dots. They represent geobacteria. They are attracted by the anode, and they transfer the electrons in it. So here it's open, you can, as I said, a lot, you can experiment, you can do a lot of chamber, you can do 2 chambers with the membrane in the middle. You can do also in a vertical way, no? Because this is an horizontal way, but you can put in vertical, and they work, of course. The most common cell is to put a cathode, like in the bottom part with the mud. You put the permeatic membrane in the middle, and after you put the water inside, up to the cell. Or you can do also like in the nature way, So there's the bottom with the mud, and in between there's a big gap of water that consent to not put the permeating membrane. This cell, that is the one in the left, is less efficient, but it works anyway. And you have to put the cathode and also the anode in the bottom. You have to put the cathode in touch with the water and also with the air, This is very important in every cell that you will do. After, you can think, for example, there's a extravagant design on the right that you can think to put mud up and water down. There's nothing so there's nothing so we can say in design you can do whatever you think, not whatever you want. The important is that makes sense. So first of all, I will explain a bit how to do the proton exchange membrane, this proton exchange membrane with common materials that you can find everywhere, also at the supermarket. Also, there's, for example, Agar that you can buy it specifically for cells, for bacteria cells, but you can use anyway which Agar you found also for do cakes, the gelatin. So the parts are, for example, 7 grams of agar, 200 milliliters of water, and then you can put or not, you can choose to put essential substances in the agar. If you don't find easily the essential substances, my first cells, for example, were to put also soup pulver, Brühe pulver. They say in Germany it's Brühe. To do bouillon. And you can experiment. You have to experiment to put a bit of agar, a bit of water, and you have to do a lot of trial. After, you will put in every dish, in every Petri dish, as we can say on the right. There's some example. And you have the shape for do your proton exchange membrane. This it works, I want to remember, to filter the hydrogen from the mud to the water. So you have to put it in between the mud and the water. After, after to put all the stuff together, you have to mix and you have to boil a bit, because it has to be a gelatin, you know. Before to put in the Petri dish, you have to boil it, put in the dish, close the dish, because we are talking about a bacteria cultivation. So you have to close every stuff very well. You have to use gloves. You have to do not like eat in the same pot that you use, you know, because it can be also dangerous for your health. Anyway, after, you will put on the fridge, and you have this gelatin. In this picture, you can see this was another cell battery, and here you can see very well that it's a gelatin, so you can manage, you can close those. Also, if it breaks, no worry. If you paid a lot for the other membranes, yeah, you know, it's here you can fail with the more expensive. It's a bit difficult to yeah. So then we can, if you don't understand something, you can also interrupt me, don't worry, or ask in the chat, and Yeva can ask me some question. For doing the anode part, as I said, we need carbon. So we can burn cotton, you know, the cotton of your t-shirt, the cotton that you use when you hurt. You can burn cotton, and you have to connect to a grid. Why this? Because the Geobacter is attracted by the coal, and the electricity from the coal, it has to be transmitted by the cable, by the wire, you know, to your multimeter, if you want to register it, or if you want to storage. Also, you can do in a transmitter. But here it's very important to take, for example, a normal grid and wrap all the carbon to permit that all the electrons can flow easily into your cable, you know. After that, we experimented a lot also in AugE, and we thought also to do a graphite anode. So you don't need the carbon, you don't need the coal, you don't need the grid. You put the graphite directly attached to your cable, and this, it will transfer your electrons into your battery. This is another way of doing it, also with a t-shirt that you can burn. You can do you can wrap it very well. As you can see here, there's a grid with little holes that permits a lot to transfer the electrons into there. And then you will put it, so the mud in the bottom part with the anode. Then you have to put the PEM, the proton exchange membrane, and then to the up you put the water, okay, where you will put also your cable that goes to the other pole of the multimeter. This cable, I have to say that it's important that this cable, it has to be half in the water and half out to the water, so not completely complete immersion into the water. It has to be half and half. After that, you can measure. Don't worry if you don't have, like, at the same time that you built it, you have one volt directly. They are geobacteria, they are living. We have to remember that we are talking about an organism, you know? So they have to work, they have to eat, they have to produce electricity from your mud. And here, as we can see from this graphic, there's an increasing curve, and it can increase a lot. After, you can put in series a lot of cells, you can put in parallel also, and you can experiment it. It's recommended to put in series a lot of cells because there's a low amperage, as we will read later. So you can implement the amperage putting in series the cells. Yeah, as the example in this other cell, you can see the first day it was 0.6 volts, and after 0.8, 0.9, until 1 volt, and it can arise also at 1 volt and a half. The amperage is very, you know, it's not a constant amperage because the geobacteria are moving around your battery. And so we think also a lot of methods to, to like maintain the amperage, that not increase or get lower. But we are talking about, in one little cell, about 0.5 of amperage. Here, as but don't worry, we are in Zoom, so we are all at home. I can, for example, show you, because I have like anyway, can I share the, no, I have to stop sharing here. I have to put video here to the camera. Yeah, here. Okay. Can you see the cell here?
No, we can't, Efren. We see your arm.
No, but there's another camera. We can see it. You are connected in two devices.
Sorry.
It's another camera. Okay, perfect. Okay, there's no like the microphone. Okay, yeah, as we can see here in this cell, we have the completely mud. We have the anode inside here, the cathode that's there. There's another kind of membrane in the middle, and if we open the multimeter, this cell, I did it like 1 hour ago, so it can be maybe no, we have 2 volts, as you can see here now. Oh, it's pretty interesting because it's very high. Yeah, but we have the multimeter 225, so we have 1.7 more or less. So as you can see, you can easily do it with what you have at home. Also, Moritz will go deeper in this point. But yeah, you can do it. And if you have questions later, wait, I have to stop sharing. Perfect. I have to share the screen. Hope that it's interesting for you. And after that, that we know how they works, I can pass to Moritz that explain how to build a 2-cell battery.
All right, thanks. Yes, I will explain a bit how to build the 2-cell battery. It is basically the same system. It is just instead of having one container, you will have 2 containers. And I made some little drawings, so I will just maybe repeat some things because it's very similar to the 1-cell. But what I will also basically show is how to build them at home. So do you also see my video, right?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect.
Very clear.
Perfect. So, I mean, in the 2-cell container, basically what you need is 2 different containers, and you can literally take everything. You can take a Tupperware and build your battery out of this, but you can also just cut into like a PET bottle, and to stand it, you can literally use aluminum foil to make a little foot stamp. So it is really easy. You can use a lot of different household items. And I will always show right now kind of one way to do it. And there are literally a million more. You could use also 2 glasses of water. Basically, what you need is 2 different containers that are separated. In the next slide, you can see that in slide number 2. Efren, can you change to?
Of course.
Thank you. Perfect. So also here, you need to put in one of those containers, you have to put the mud. But as Efren said, you can find those bacteria in a lot of different environments. And I just literally went to my garden and went to the compost, and surprisingly, it worked. So those Geobacteria, you find them literally everywhere. You can also maybe use coffee compost, or there's so many places you can find some of them, or just like use normal digs for some earth and you can use it. So on the left side, you have to fill some of the compost. And on the other side, what you have to fill is basically water. So it's again the same concept as the 1-cell, just now separated into containers. And what you then need, here on the left, you can see there must be, of course, some special bacteria, which are those Geobacter. What you then need, and what you can see in the next slide, you need this, what Efren said before, you need this membrane. And the difference between the 1-cell and the 2-cell battery is basically that now you don't have them together and you have a big membrane separating them, but what you have is called the Agar salt bridge, which is something like this. You can also build it in a ton of different ways. I just use kind of plastic tubes I found at home with some vitamin pills inside, but you can use whatever you want. You can use a hose, or yeah, just any tubing, any plastic tubing you find, and then you fill it with some agar. As Efren showed, you cook it, you mix it with some salt to make it more conductive for the ions to travel between container 1 to container 2. And there you have your little salt bridge. And what you then have to do, you have just to cut 2 holes in each container and glue them so they connect them. And here you can also see quite why you need those bridge is because they should not mix. So the mud and the water should be separated by this kind of jelly. As you can see, it's really this very jelly substance. So the water cannot travel from the one to the other container, but the ions, and they can. So there are also some techniques to fill this up. I used some plastic foil, but I'm sure if you just research long enough, you can also find some less plastic involved processes. Maybe you can use paper. What you could also use, you could cut the bottles here and glue together 2 plastic bottle caps and to make a little tube out of it. Also once I just put them on a hot flame, and then you can pull it because it becomes soft, the PET plastic, and then you can just make your own tubes, and you can really recycle everything you want. And then basically what you have, almost everything. And on the left side, we have the mud chamber, also called the anode chamber. And what you need now is a place for the geobacteria that you find in the mud to attach to. And as Efren showed, what you need is something that contains coal or graphite. And I literally used just some coal from barbecuing from last summer, because also its surface is quite big. And then what you need is you want more surface. So you want a lot of tiny pieces. And so you build, as Efren also built, you build like a little conductive cage, you know, like a little grid, which is important to be connected to a wire. I also just used a wire from an old radio. You can use literally everything that is conductive, some metal, some wire. You can maybe use a spoon if you want, if you have one that is conductive to electricity. Then you fill your coal inside, and then you place this object, this anode, inside the mud, and you can see it on the next slide. And then the bacteria has some places to attach to. And another possibility is I use this kind of metal sponge from my kitchen, and wrapped inside there some coal. And so you want a lot of surface. That's why we just don't put a piece of coal inside, but we use a lot of little tiny pieces of coal. You could also maybe use active coal if you want, which has a bigger surface. And that's why we make this little cage for it, just to contain it, and it doesn't just flow around. And also in order to connect it to a wire, right? So if you would just put the coal in the mud, it wouldn't really work, because it needs to be connected to a wire. And then in the next picture, in the next slide, you can see actually how to finish the battery by just connecting the graphite with some conductive wire to the cathode chamber, the water, and then basically you have it. That's already everything you need. 2 containers, Agar salt bridge connecting both, the anode, the cathode, and the wire, and then that's it. There's already electric current. And on the next slide, you can see if you would place a tiny LED lamp, it would glow. You can of course also use something called a multimeter to precisely measure the flow of electrons, the current, and also the amperage, as Efren also showed you. But you can literally place a tiny LED if you have enough current to check if there's electricity running. So you just have to be a bit creative and look around what you have, because you really don't need a lot to do it yourself. And then, as Efren said, if you just put enough of them together, you might be even able to make use of it, to maybe run a little Raspberry Pi computer, or to run a little clock. I mean, you have to just check how productive they are, how many you have in the mud you find, and place some together. And then, yes, that's it. And of course, the voltage we're getting out of those batteries is quite low, but it's also quite a new technology. So we don't know, but we might find, if we all just keep on researching, we just might find a way to make really use of it and make it more profitable in the future. I mean, who knows? But it's also just really fun to work with them. What you also can do is this salt bridge. You can put it in a round tube and connect it on top a bit like this. Then you don't need to use any glue. So that would also be possible to fill the agar here inside, and then instead of traveling from the right to the left, it travels in this little bow on top. That's also possible and a bit easier than using a lot of glue or hot glue. Yeah, that's also possible. So there's a lot of room still to experiment, to find a good, easy way to make it yourself.
Perfect. We have one practical question from Maxi.
Thank you.
How should the ratio be between the agar-agar part and the water?
So what I used is I cooked it as the recipe, but then I just reduced the water. I just made maybe 10% of the water that is in the recipe, so the agar becomes more stiff and more hard. Of course, it's not anymore so yummy as before, but it's more hard. So just reduce water, add a lot of salt, as much as you want, just enough. You have to experiment, but yeah, just fewer water than is written on the recipe. Yeah. But there's not the perfect thing.
Can I maybe just comment on this? It was my question. I meant actually how the ratio between how thick is this layer of agar compared to the water containers. So I'm just wondering, if I have, of course, a 1 meter pipe of agar, it might not travel through then in the end. But how thick is has this to be, this bridge? Do you have like a rough?
It's so For respond at this question, there's not a direct comparison to. Can you hear me? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not talking. Okay, hello. Yeah, the important thing is that you have to be a part where the hydrogen can pass, so it doesn't have to be too thin, you know. More thicker is the salt bridge, more exchange of hydrogen you have between the water part and the bacteria part, and the bacteria cell, we can say, half of the cell. So if we have to talk ideologically, a surface of agar-agar, it's very nice. If you have only a little tube, it can pass also the hydrogen between, but it will pass less hydrogen, you know, because of the space. The thickness of the salt bridge, it's not so important. It has to be thicker. We experimented also. Moritz shows you the tube, so it was, yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of agar-agar inside. If the agar-agar it's very thin, the problem that you can have is that this agar-agar falls down to the other part, breaks, you know, for the heaviness of the water. But yeah, you have to do like a bit of attention when you put it, when you work on it, but it's not a big problem, because anyway you can experiment a lot. You can do a lot of salt bridge, of permeatic membranes.
Yeah, I think it's a bit, to say it a bit unscientifically, it's a bit like a cable, you know. It can be also long or short. Of course, at a certain length, it loses efficiency. But I think it can also be longer. It's not really a problem. It's more other things that make it more efficient or not. And as Efren said, yeah.
Exactly. As for example, I followed also the scientific way to do a Petri dish, and it was pretty nice. It works. Yeah, it works well. This part with the 7 grams, 200 milliliter. After you have to do, you know, if you want to do less agar-agar, you have to divide all the parts. But this, it works quite well. Let's try, I will say.
Okay, thanks.
No worry.
All right. Thank you so much, Efren and Moritz, for this wonderful presentation. For myself, I will have to go over this material once again to be able to create a battery, but it was very interesting. Now I would like to open up the room for other questions. If someone wants to ask something, please be free to
chat or open the mic, don't worry.
Exactly. If not, I have a question actually, so maybe I can start. So you mentioned a little bit that maybe compared to the other durable energy sources that we have, like solar or wind energy, these bacteria batteries don't produce as much power. But why should we still kind of research them or think about them?
Answer you, Moritz, and after we do like 2 response.
Yeah, I think you have to take in account that it's a rather new technology, and of course, I mean, when we started harvesting energy from wind, I also don't think it was really profitable at first, and now we do have already some wind turbines that are, of course, as we can see in the nature, profitable. So I guess we should just not lose faith and believe in this, and maybe also experimenting and doing scientific research in this direction, it can also lead to other technologies and it can open other doors and other kinds of understanding. So I think we should not give up just because we have low results. And also Efren and I, we're just two dudes at home mixing together some mud. So I guess also if this would get more scientific attention and also more funding and more people researching it, it might could lead to something that is maybe just in a niche, but also just broadly profitable.
Yeah, I agree with Moritz, and I have to add also that there are you can do it easily at home or in a place where you can do it, where you have like a laboratory. When we do this, when we did these Geobacteria cells in environments more like professional with with instruments, with also anaerobic pumps, it's more efficient, of course, that it is. But the efficiency of the cell is not related also only to this stuff. You can think at that, and with easily thoughts between the cells, you can easily go up with the amperage and the voltage. You can put a lot in series. Okay, maybe start go and join to a car or stuff like that. For now, it's but we have to implement. We have to research. Everybody has to research between that. I think also that the solar energy at the beginning, it was a bit a bit low voltage, but after with the silice, with the implement, so it's possible to implement a lot and experiment a lot.
Okay, yes, that's very interesting. And you also mentioned before that these bacteria batteries could, one of the plus sides is that they can create or rather produce energy continuously from other other durable energy sources like wind or solar that are more connected to their environment, let's just say that, because not always we have wind or nor sun. So in what other ways, maybe there are some other like advantages to these bacteria batteries, or maybe in the future there might be?
Of course, then we have to count that we are talking about closed cell, so it's a closed system. You are working in glass, but if we imagine like the geothermic way to have hot at home, in a natural way, there's a continuous exchange of iron, of the sun, of microorganism that goes in the water, like in the river. So we have to think that like the solar, like the aeolic, we can put it directly, we can implement this system directly to the nature. So it's more also we can have more results. After we were saying after that there's the sun, it works 12 hours per day. Maybe when you are like near the polo, it's it works more. There's the wind, and for the aeolic energy, they have to find the wind. They have to find the zone when there's always wind. They have to put these big structures into the ocean because there's a continuous. But Yeah, Geobacteria works yeah.
Yeah, also one thing is what you said it works quite quiet, and that's also a good point to say that it is, let's say, to produce solar panels, you need a lot of resources.
Exactly.
And also you need a lot of space. Also for wind turbines, you have some very minor problems with environment and birds. It's very small, of course, compared to the benefits of wind energy, but there is a small amount of damage to the environment. And those geobacters, fuel cells, right now we don't see those kind of problems with. It doesn't really need any resources other than mud, and of course some wires and some containers, but also those could be all produced quite emission low, and also quite clean, let's say. So that could also be a big advantage. And also right now we haven't, correct me if I'm wrong, Efren, we haven't really seen a correlation between size and efficiency. So probably we can also shrink the size of the bacteria, of the cells themselves. So you wouldn't get more energy if you make them bigger. And so of course there's a minimum size, but so they're quite small. So if you could make them more efficient and keep their small size, that could be also an advantage.
Yeah, because the energy is related to the activity of geobacteria, and we have to count that these geobacteria are very, very little, you know. So it's not important to have like a big pot of mud and you do like 300 volts. You can have a little glass of mud and do most efficiently more voltage. Yeah, if you think behind it, of course. At the anode part, as we says, there's the graphite, there's you can implement a lot. You can put a better membrane, like also Maxi said, where think this part, you know, it are all thoughts that are right, of course.
Okay, great. So we had a follow-up question. I think you answered it pretty much. How do you see the scalability of Geobacter electricity? But feel free to say something else, as well as, are there some labs, corporations researching it or researching these bacteria?
Yeah, there's like also Suzuki. I read that Suzuki gives like is starting now a researching project about geobacteria. It's burning like some years ago, and yeah, they are implement a lot this energy. So I think that there are also around the world. You remember, Moritz, some other examples?
No,
There's
not
the
really.
University of Massachusetts that is working on it. There's, yeah.
But also right now it is used by, as from Rasa and her colleagues, it is used by artists using it for their media art and science art projects. And also another advantage that we didn't actually mention is that right now this closed system is producing, or is like generating energy, and also it's purifying water. But you can also turn around this process by putting energy inside the system, and then it will produce things like hydrogen gas that you can burn. So you can also, it is not only capable to produce energy, but you can also change it and use it in different directions to get other chemical parts out of the system. That could also be interesting. But we both, I think, haven't researched a lot into that, but that's also possible.
For example, yeah, in the research that I was doing here in the Venetian Lagoon in Italy, I took a lot of carottage around the lagoon, and I saw that more near the industries, the metal industries, the geobacteria are quite a lot in the mud. It's related to the iron, you know, because the central will pull out heavy substances of iron, and so the geobacteria can eat more, and they are more in that point. So yes, you like Moritz says now, you also purify water when you do this process. Purify mud. If there's dirt water, you can purify it. So it's that we can say that we have two big deal on it. Yeah.
And also Moritz mentioned something interesting, that actually these geobacteria are mostly researched by artists. So you are both graphic designers. I wanted to ask you.
I'm a product designer, so maybe Moritz, you have to respond to this question.
But well, it still stands. Why are you interested in making this durable energy, as well as what do you think do artists have a responsibility as well to kind of create or research these topics?
Yeah, that's I mean, of course, every artist has a responsibility, of course. But I mean, as a graphic designer, I don't really research on it as part of my graphic design practice. I research it more as a free project, not connected to my graphic design practice. And I did it because it was so easy to work at home on it during lockdown. It was also more like a hobby that now I think is quite interesting. And since it was so easy to work on it, I literally, when I wanted to work on it, I never had to go shopping for parts because I just found them at my place. And so that was what was interesting for me. And I wasn't really connecting it to my own practice. I think Efren used it more in his product design practice than I do. For me, it was more like a really fun hobby, an interesting hobby. And also, of course, the responsibility you have as a human, I think, is quite important. Not only as an artist, but just as a human. Yeah.
Yeah, I have also to add that, you know, every stuff like start also with art, because when there's art, there's a research behind, there's topics behind, there's ideas behind. As designer, we have to, as product designer, we have to work, and we have to don't like close our vision into our part. So I think that all this stuff that you can have energy from the ground, the earth, and you can use it in several ways is interesting, not only for engineers, not only for biologists, not only for product designers. It's a thing that everybody has to count, and like a person that is more curious, it's also open-minded, you know. Yeah, you have to do research in every field. So yeah, it's what we do also in the university when we approach in a project. I usually do it here in Venice, but also in Karlsruhe it was like that. And yeah, it has a lot of fields. You can implement these cells in chemistry field, you can implement these cells in physics fields, but at the end it has to return an idea, a shape, and it's like art. It has yeah, it has to be an invention, an imaginary behind that, like Moritz says now.
Oh, yes. Aldo would like to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. I wanted to ask a question regarding the sustainability. So, for example, you were talking about how the cells mainly work on either mud or compost. And I'm just thinking industrially, if you start to need a lot of mud and you have to dig up riverbeds or near Venice, I can see that being a bit problematic. Do you know if any mud works, or as you said, does it have to be iron rich?
You mean that it's a bit problematic for the environment and presence of metal in the bottom of the rivers?
So what I mean so I looked at the papers that you were citing, and for example, you need to
Yeah.
change the mud every, I don't know, a week, something like that. Would that be correct?
Yeah, you need to change the mud because we are talking about a closed system.
Absolutely.
You know? So there's not the flowing of the water, there's no rain, there's no new iron that comes down. For example, Venice lagoon is like all the lagoons, it's full of river that comes into the lagoon, and they take rocks and iron as substances from the mountains, and the river goes down through the sea. So it's pretty interesting, the research on the lagoon. And we have to also count, for example, I did experiment also around the industries, because us as a human, we are doing, we are putting like, yeah, the hand on the planet. And sometimes it's too much. For example, here in Porto Marghera, it's one industry, very big chemical industry. Yeah, and there's a lot of pollution in the water around Marghera.
Yeah, and
So
also what I think
you have to
interesting to
think
say
to
or important,
purify. Yeah.
important to say is that what you need is not the mud itself, but what you need is the bacteria. And of course, in our closed systems, as Efren said, you have to change the mud once a week. So that would of course not be very ecological in a bigger scale, but imagine you can just, I mean, those bacteria is a living object. So if you can feed them, and if you can yeah, let's say harvest them, then you don't need always new mud. What you need is kind of their food, and you need the bacteria themselves. So it could be quite ecological if you of course don't change the mud every 1 week. And also the mud afterwards isn't toxic, you can just replace the mud, so
Yeah.
I think we have enough toxic or enough iron rich mud to think at least in a bigger scale. Yeah,
you can also give food to there. You can also, for example, I tried also to feed there, like with bruje pulver. You are Italian.
Yes.
Brodo, dado.
Yeah. So
dado,
to make soup. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. That you do
Yeah.
soup, and they eat because it's organic substances that they eat also. Yeah, so you can feed them, but you can also do yourself in a river. If you have a river near home, you can put cathodes to the bottom of the river, also a small lake or a pot, I don't know. And you can see there's an interesting Teresa van der Wergen, that it's an artist also, that she did also experiments with geobacteria in a hole of the Second World War, in an explosion holes, where there was a lot of iron of the bomb, and now there's rust inside these holes in Denmark, I think, yeah. And so they eat also today this iron, and they produce electricity. And you can see, like, in these very little pots holes, you can see geobacteria inside.
Right. So that was my question regarding the mud. I also have one regarding the compost, which is how do these bacteria fare with more traditional anaerobic respiration methods? So for example, to create methane, how does it compare? Do you have any figures on efficiency, on reliability, or is this really like we're starting off now?
At least for me, yes. I don't know how Efren, if Efren you have numbers for that, but I don't really know. I was just trying different things. So compost was working, then I went to just normal soil for my garden. That was working. Yeah. And also I had so many changing factors that I couldn't really say, okay, the compost is working better than the soil. It was just both kind of working. Some day it was more, some day it was less. So not really scientific.
We have to count that also Moritz found in compost all these all those bacteria, because compost comes from humid zones. Yeah, and there's a change of they growth, like, but they are less than an anaerobic part, because they prefer, like also as Lovely says, the microbiologist that I told you before, he says that in the bottom of the mud, in the anaerobic part, they are more they are working more Geobacteria sulfureducens. After, for example, we can say that in the compost you can find other kind of bacteria that, you know, that they play in your cells. Yeah. So if you go in an anaerobic lake, river, also in the bottom of the sea, you are sure that there are Geobacteria of this kind of Geobacteria. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Don't worry.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. So now we have 30 minutes to pass on to our Ideathon part of this discussion, meaning that our participants are more than welcome to be more active in this part. I will share a link to Mural just now, like this, and then also I will share my screen.
Yeah, I interrupt mine. We can also share the link that we said before, Moritz, the footprint. Maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go on. Don't worry.
Okay, great. So we are here. Do you see everybody? Yes, the mural? I think so, it should be.
Yeah, I can see it, of course.
Okay, perfect. So basically we have 3 big questions that we need to find answers, or not answers, but ideas for. And the first one is, what does a greener and more sustainable Europe mean to you? And what is your vision? And of course, keeping in mind everything that we learned in this workshop, as well as keeping in mind our permaculture ethics, earth care, people, society, careful process. You can also see them and reread them if you need to. And here I'm welcoming you to share your ideas and thoughts with using text format like this. You can try, as well as obviously if you don't want to write anything, we can just start this discussion. For example, I can ask Moritz, what does a greener and more sustainable Europe mean to you?
I'm accede, you know. Got it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's possible to.
Maybe someone else maybe someone else wants to share their.
Sure. Yeah, of course we can put something about produce energy, or there's how I can write on it. This
You click on the.
on the yeah.
And then you-
Okay. Yeah. I'm like an old man. Nice. Okay.
Okay, so we have one idea: connect environmental visions with social visions. That is definitely something that we need to work on. For me, I guess a greener and more sustainable Europe would mean really to switch to producing electricity in a more durable way, using all of these solar power, wind power, hydrological power, as well as one day maybe the bacteria power as well.
Yeah, of course. And we can also, I'm trying to do two things at a time, you know. They say that men's are not good to do that. So, no, it's an horrible circle. But yeah, there's very nice ISO ethics down there. I do the no, I can change the colors. Sorry, huh? Okay. Yeah, also if other people wants to
Yes, feel
say something also from other universities, is very interesting to
Yes, we still have some participants here. So please feel free to share your ideas. Cradle to cradle principle. Okay. Respecting us and what surrounds us. That is a big one. That is something that we also talked about in the main session with Maija and her food growing, as well as Lina, who presented us with how we interact with nature. Or rather, I think nowadays people, we're a bit removed from nature. And I think that is a great way how to kind of reconnect, is also to make these bacteria batteries. Is very cool.
Also we can say, for example, that when we do when we are gonna buy a car, for example, we have to think if now in Europe there's a lot of restriction, and it's right, because they are the European Union says that they have to extinguish the petrol cars, the diesel cars. And I think that also in other part of the world they are not doing this, but we have to know as first, we have to do as first, because we have to change our society after they will copy us, you know. If we don't have to be scary about change, I think. After we can also open a discussion about lithium and batteries, because you know now batteries are more efficient, but you have to go to take lithium in South America, and it's another problem when it will finish, because also our phones are full of batteries, and we change phone every every 3 years or 1 year or 2 years. So we have also to be more responsible when we have a product, you know, because it's easy today to go to Amazon and buy some stuff.
Of course.
But we have also to think when we are buying if it's a good way or if it's well done, this object. And also as designer, for example, I'm talking as designer, I have to think other ways to do a phone without a lot of materials, you know. Don't put like compounds together. Yeah,
Exactly. And
plastic and metal together, or silicone, or yeah, there's a lot of topic, and the world is looking at it now.
you're very right. And as consumers, we also have a very big responsibility actually to choose products that are more sustainable, greener, and thus we kind of demand that these products are made. Because without demand, there's no, I forgot it in English. Anyway, okay, great. This looks good. I think we have plenty of ideas. Now let's go to our present moment. So how do we see the situation now? Obviously with bacteria batteries, right now it's a very interesting concept and idea, but it still needs to be researched. We have some type of durable energy resources that we can use. But obviously we are living on a planet that has a finite amount of resources. So obviously we need to think about that as well. If you would mind, thank you everybody who shared their ideas about the greener Europe. Now let's go to the present moment. I think that is, we still have some time and we need to go to the present moment and then we can move on to the future. Okay, here in the present moment, visions are often too short-term. Sure, yes, if we're kind of focusing on short-term solutions, there may be a bit easier at the moment, then they're not going to help us in the future. Maybe someone else wants to share their ideas who's still in our group, maybe. Oh, Lina. Lina, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Lina.
Hey.
How do you see the situation now in terms of, I don't know, in general or in energy, how we are producing energy?
I was just thinking it would be so interesting to actually calculate how much energy like I'm using in a moment, using 2 screens open, computer all day from 9 a.m. to 6 a.m. to have a calculator to really grasp the idea how much do we use. As I think the first thing of what's situation now, if I watch different videos, if I watch all sorts of documentaries, listening to talks, the present moment is not the best. Say we are in a trouble, and with the COVID having viruses running around the earth tells us nicely that, guys, it's not, we need to really look out what's happening. And yet observing how much people use and abuse, keep using and wanting to go to the old patterns, we want to go back to how it was. A lot of, not everyone, of course not, but a lot of people say that. And that just sees how much we are attached to our comfortable habits of consuming without thinking. And I think that's one of the trickiest parts, is how can we change our habits and maybe not use 2 screens, or if I need to use 1 screen and maybe a certain amount of times, I'm literally looking at myself. Or if I do that, which to be aware how much I'm using it, and to see what else can I offer to the nature that I'm taking out of nature. So becoming aware of, say, okay, I'll plant 5 trees this year because I use that amount of electricity, or I will not buy bottled water, which I don't, but I will find another way. So it's the consumption and abuse of consumption. We have it. We created this machinery that we are literally responsible for. And to get out of it, it's not a quick or easy process. But just becoming aware of where we are in balance or disbalance of consuming and giving back. I think that's something to be aware of in any circumstances, in any things that we do. So, yeah.
Yes, I think that is very, it's a very good point, because we were also talking, Maija talked about how to grow your own food. And when we were preparing for this Ideathon, we were also kind of presenting these ideas. For example, what do I give back to nature? And I was thinking about it the other day, and at first I was like, I don't give back anything. That was my first thought. Okay. But then I was like, okay, if I don't eat meat, for example, so that is something. Would that count, for example, or should
yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't count for that. What you don't take, that you don't give. I mean, I do eat meat, but I eat biological meat, and for me, it's like if I consume monoculture paprika, which is full chemicals, no vitamins, a huge amount of used land, it's not better if I consume one biological chicken who's grown in a farm. So it's not. We need to think of also, I thought about it, but then for me, it's like, if I'm not taking, it's good, but what do I give back? For instance, you leading this kind of event, even if we use a lot of electricity, but creating awareness about these things, maybe it's worth using that amount of electricity if you reach so many people and inspire and make them think and create such a program that actually people go home and think, I switched the light off, and that's where you give. Okay. So that's ways as well. Eating vegetables, you might think you might take it, but if it's grown vegetable with abuse of human resources, it comes from South America, and it has a lot of imprint, and it has no vitamins for your body. Then the question, being such a vegan or vegetarian, is it really worth it? Yes, so you know, it's such an entangled web to look at. Sometimes it gets really heavy and not always fun. But I think the time now, we need to start opening our eyes and daring to look what this reality is, and admitting that we are the ones who have to carry the responsibility. I saw in other places where power was given to politicians and big corporations, and some people were saying that as a consumers, we can do just little, not enough. It's true, and I think we have more power than we think we do as individuals, because politicians are the same individuals. Corporations are built out of the same individuals. And who was, I think it is in your was saying, don't give up in the future, that one.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think this is very important message. Don't give up, because sometimes, even how many times I work with all this ecology, there is a point where my hands are just dropping down and like, I'm too tired now. I just don't want to care anymore. And then I rest, and then again, I'm like, okay, let's go again.
Yeah, exactly. Find a new way, or as well as you don't have to be perfect.
Yeah, it's not, I think it's trust. I remember someone, I was talking with the New Zealander once, we talked about this possible plant kingdom project in New Zealand. And I shared that it's really heavy talking about doing it in education systems that are not really welcoming these kind of projects, and or paying so little that it's literally impossible to live out of it. And then maybe it's really not worth working for 2 kids. But then she said, like, don't worry, the kid who had fun, even one person, if you change it, it's already like a lifetime you change for someone. So underestimation of our capacity, and trusting that actually someone will react, someone will influence each other. It's, you know, it's like a butterfly effect.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so we have moved on to the third big question of today, and it is our future. So what could you do or you wish to contribute in order to reach our vision into becoming a greener, more sustainable society, Europe?
Yeah.
And we have...
Yeah, I think this is more like it's a process from present to the future. So if we had a future vision of Green Europe, at least the way I thought the question would be, and of course that's totally fine for interpretations of what is it like I can actually, if I'm here and I'm bubbling, this is and I wish this amazing future, what me as a person who's participating here can offer, and see the steps so we actually can reach at least something towards future. People says, no, take more time in choosing what to consume. And yes, that's a good one. We have too much. Yes, we really have to, way too much. That's a very good one. Maybe. Way too much. And I'm also sitting and I'm like, oh my God, so many stuff. Then if we have too much, then fair share or careful process would be something to use in, from the ethics of permaculture. You have too much, give the ones who don't have. If you have too much clothes, there are enough people sleeping on the street who needs that, take it, give it. So maybe in order to, we have too much, it's an observation, which is more in the presence, like now we have too much, or at least in the people who are talking. And the step, what we can do is to share what we have too much.
I think that also it's between, I put it in the future because it's also a topic of the future, you know. Amazon, it's increasing, are opening new ways of yeah, and they are like doing this compulsive they are taking on over and over this compulsive way of shopping, of have, and so it's a problem also of the future, because you know it's all around the object that turns around. Yeah, we have to share, we have also to think, if we are, for example, product designer, we have to do object with less compounds material.
Yeah.
If we are working on cinema, we have to transmit some values, or on art.
Yeah.
If we are architects also, and also logistics and supply chain, there's a lot of people that turns around a movement. And yeah, I think that that day that Amazon says, okay, you can have your product in one day, and the people cannot attend anymore, It was a big idea, but they have to calculate also today what's the point of this idea, because they have to say, okay, we are sending around a lot of camions, a lot of airplanes. Yeah, and they have to think, if you have an idea, you have also to think at what the idea takes with it. I don't know how to say.
Yeah. No, I think it's also something for ourselves as an individual. Amazon, sure, they have billions and billions euros. They have all sorts of things, and yet, for instance, before I was buying a lot from Amazon. Now I found other ways to buy books, not via Amazon anymore. Buy other goods, and I'm choosing local, like a Belgium, Dutch, German suppliers for because of course pandemic as well, but also I want to use differently. And yeah, but it's also something that what you personally can do, what could be your steps not to use too much. And when you talked about architects, I just saw recently that there were two architects, I think in Italy, I can't remember.
Yeah,
First
is
prize.
the name, it's the Milan, the architect from Milan, it's
Oh, we should remain to
he did the vertical skyscraper with
no, it's not. I don't think about that, but there was a couple who didn't do, they were offered to transform the square in one town, and they just changed the sand. So their concept is do nothing, just adapt and change. That was the best design project of the year, and they got some Golden Globe, I don't know. So I think also sometimes do nothing these days, because we have so much. We have enough products for probably another 100 years. We have enough designs, we have enough houses, we have enough of everything. And even the question of specialization or jobs, what would happen if we would just simply choose to enjoy what we already have? Because we're so much in process of producing more and more, doing. And with all these things that we created, maybe it's a time to really slow down, and it requires a huge change of mentality and habits. I don't know if that's possible at all, but something drastic change of how we used to think, what is really needed. And I think this part of that, some countries already introducing like basic monthly salary that people would get. So simply be able to survive without freaking out and working over hours. I think that would be a really interesting idea to see if it would start working. So that could give people space to relax and to enjoy, and maybe to just be for a change with all we already have.
Of course. Yeah, no, I was like thinking while you were talking that in my university there was a discussion in a class, because there's this architect, Stefano Boeri, I found the name, and now he's doing architectures with the green up to the architecture. So for example, like a skyscraper full of
I've seen this with the trees.
And there was some people saying that there's no reason for it, because the efficiency of the skyscraper in this case, it's not increased the good efficiency, because more or less for the UV and it's not this big project. But we were saying also that we have to count that it's a green point where also birds can use it for their migration. They can go there. when there's an hot day and all the humid goes down, it doesn't goes up to the cement, but it's you know, it takes from the
I seen these.
plants.
I seen this.
So there's also less humidity. There's also less, because when there's sun, there's the cement and the water goes to the sky very quickly. If you have a forest, the process is more, you know. So we have to think all around the cities also, because they saying, some statistics says that in 10 years a lot of, like they says, the 80% of the population goes into the
cities,
into the centers, into the city centers.
And this is maybe something like question: is this something we could avoid and reverse, for instance, and go back to the land and offer people land that they can work and actually recreate the greenery, rather than putting everything in skyscrapers, especially that Italy might become the earthquake zone with the climate change, and skyscrapers are not the best to withhold that. And of course, so I know this looking vision that people gonna go into the cities, and question is like,
sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are closing already. So if you could summarize, we're already returning to the main session. So if you could summarize everything in 1 minute, it would be great. And then we will close the breakout rooms.
I think that you can finish the phrase.
No, it's okay, it's fun. I think it's these discussions is endless constantly, and we never have enough time, and we always want to continue talking, and it's excellent.
But it's good because we are thinking at it. So
it's good that to have a group of people who think in the same direction and offer different possibilities and thoughts and projects. Okay, I'll leave to the facilitator to wrap up, I think.
Thank you, everybody, for this lovely discussion. Thank you for your participation. Big thanks to Efren and Moritz for educating us more on bacteria batteries. And yes, now we are just leaving for the main session.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your attention. Exactly.